Addiction is a serious issue that can affect individuals of all ages and backgrounds. Here are the top types of addiction. Alcohol addiction. Cravings and loss of control over drinking. Interference with daily life, such as work and relationships. Drug addiction. Physical and psychological dependence on drugs. Continued use despite negative consequences. Nicotine addiction. Withdrawal symptoms when not using nicotine. Increased risk of health problems, including lung cancer and heart disease. Gambling addiction. Persistent and recurrent problematic gambling behavior. Interference with personal, social, or professional life. Shopping addiction. Compulsive and excessive spending on shopping. Negative impact on finances and relationships. Internet addiction. Excessive use of the internet, including social media, gaming, and pornography. Interference with daily life and social relationships. Video game addiction. Obsessive and compulsive gaming behavior. Interference with daily life, such as work and relationships. Food addiction. Compulsive overeating and binge eating. Interference with physical health and body image. Exercise addiction. Obsessive and compulsive exercise behavior. Interference with physical health and social relationships. Sex addiction. Compulsive and excessive sexual behavior. Interference with personal, social, or professional life. Love addiction. Obsessive and intense preoccupation with romantic relationships. Interference with daily life and personal well-being. Work addiction. Obsessive and compulsive work behavior. Interference with personal and social life and physical health. Social media addiction. Excessive and compulsive use of social media platforms. Interference with social relationships and personal well-being. Prescription drug addiction. Physical and psychological dependence on prescription drugs. Continued use despite negative consequences. Heroin addiction. Physical and psychological dependence on heroin. Increased risk of health problems and overdose. Methamphetamine addiction. Physical and psychological dependence on methamphetamine. Increased risk of health problems and overdose. Cocaine addiction. Physical and psychological dependence on cocaine. Increased risk of health problems and overdose. MDMA/ecstasy addiction. Physical and psychological dependence on MDMA/ecstasy. Increased risk of health problems and overdose. Ketamine addiction. Physical and psychological dependence on ketamine. Increased risk of health problems and overdose. Steroid addiction. Physical and psychological dependence on anabolic steroids. Increased risk of health problems and overdose. Inhalant addiction. Physical and psychological dependence on inhalants. Increased risk of health problems and overdose. Synthetic cannabinoid addiction. Physical and psychological dependence on synthetic cannabinoids. Increased risk of health problems and overdose. Club drug addiction. Physical and psychological dependence on club drugs. Increased risk of health problems and overdose. Prescription stimulant addiction. Physical and psychological dependence on prescription stimulants. Increased risk of health problems and overdose. Over-the-counter medication addiction. Physical and psychological dependence on over-the-counter medications. Increased risk of health problems and overdose. Steroid cream addiction. Physical and psychological dependence on topical steroid creams. Increased risk of skin problems and other health issues. Tanning addiction. Compulsive and excessive tanning behavior. Increased risk of skin cancer and other health problems. Plastic surgery addiction. Compulsive and excessive desire for cosmetic procedures. Increased risk of physical and mental health problems. In conclusion, addiction is a complex and serious issue that can have a profound impact on an individual's life. There are many different types of addiction, each with its own unique set of characteristics and challenges. Whether it is substance abuse, behavioral addiction, or process addiction, seeking help and support is essential in overcoming addiction and achieving long-term recovery. It is important to remember that recovery is a journey and not a destination, and it requires ongoing effort, commitment, and self-care. With the right resources and support, individuals struggling with addiction can successfully manage their condition and lead fulfilling and healthy lives.